Canada showed up to the 2026 World Championship the way Canada always shows up, with a roster full of NHL players, a country that expects a medal, and a bronze medal game they were supposed to win. They lost it, to Norway, in overtime. And the best player on that Norwegian team was an 18-year-old who had just finished his first professional season, and who belongs to the Toronto Maple Leafs. His name is Tinus Luc Koblar. And what happened in Zurich was not an upset. It was the first medal in the history of Norwegian hockey. Let me put a number on that, because the number is the whole story. Norway has been sending teams to the IIHF World Championship since before the Second World War. Almost 90 years of tournaments, almost 90 years of showing up, losing to Sweden and Finland and Canada, and going home. In all of that time, Norway had never once finished in the top 3 of a top-division IIHF tournament. Not once, not in any age group. The trophy case was empty. In 2026, they finished 3rd. They beat Canada 3-2 in overtime in the bronze medal game. Noah Steen scored the winner 3 minutes and 32 seconds into sudden death, coming down on a 2-on-1. And Norway had its first medal. And the leading scorer for that Norwegian team, across the whole tournament, was Koblar. 9 points, 6 goals, and 3 assists. 18 years old, in a tournament full of grown men who play in the National Hockey League. 6 goals at a men's World Championship at 18. That is the number to hold on to, because it is the one that does not have an easy explanation. So who is he, and how did Toronto end up with him? Tinus Luc Koblar was born in Slovenia and raised in Norway, which is already an unusual sentence in hockey. He is a center. The Maple Leafs took him in the second round of the 2025 NHL draft, 64th overall, a pick that got very little attention at the time, because 64th overall picks generally do not get attention. Roughly half of them never play an NHL game. Then he went to Sweden. Not to a junior team, to Leksands IF in the Swedish Hockey League, which is one of the best professional leagues in the world outside the NHL. He played 47 games there in 2025-26 and put up 14 points. Now, 14 points in 47 games is not a number that makes anybody stand up. And this is the part that matters. So stay with me. 14 points is a completely normal, even encouraging, total for an 18-year-old forward in the SHL. That league is full of 30-year-old professionals whose job is to make sure teenagers do not score. Most 18-year-olds in Europe are still playing junior. Koblar spent his Draft +1 season playing against men every night and held his own. That is the context nobody had in May, when Norway named its World Championship roster, and Koblar was on it. Here is what the tournament looked like from Norway's side. Norway is not a hockey country in the way Canada or Sweden is. It has a fraction of the registered players. It has produced a small handful of real NHL regulars in its entire history, Mats Zuccarello being the famous one. Going into the tournament, the expectation was the usual expectation: compete, avoid relegation, go home. That expectation is not disrespect, it is arithmetic. A national program's ceiling is set by how many kids play the sport, how many rinks exist, and how many coaches there are to teach them. Canada has hundreds of thousands of registered players and an entire economy built around junior hockey. Norway has a population smaller than the Greater Toronto area. When those two teams meet, the result is usually decided before the puck drops, and everybody in the building knows it. Instead, they made the medal round, and in the bronze medal game they drew Canada, a team stocked with NHL talent, and they beat them in overtime. Finland won the gold, their 5th. Switzerland took silver. Canada finished 4th, off the podium at a World Championship, which for that program counts as a bad year all by itself. And Norway, for the first time since the 1930s, went home with something in the bag, Koblar was on the ice against players he grew up watching. He has said Sidney Crosby was his idol, and he played against him. He was asked afterward who the hardest player in the tournament was to face, and he named Macklin Celebrini, the first overall pick from 2024, because of Celebrini's 200-foot game and how hard he competes. That is the level Koblar was operating at, and he led his country in scoring in it. Drop it in the comments right now. If your country had gone 89 years without a single medal, and you were 18 years old and leading the team in goals, would you have been able to sleep the night before that game? Be honest. Now, let's talk about what this actually means for Toronto, because that is the reason this matters to you. The Maple Leafs are coming off the worst season they have had in a decade. 32 wins, 36 regulation losses, 14 overtime losses, 78 points, 8th in the Atlantic Division. Out of the playoffs for the first time since 2015-16, after the biggest single-season points drop in franchise history. No Stanley Cup since 1967. The one thing that went right was the pipeline. The Marlies won the Calder Cup. Toronto won the draft lottery and took Gavin McKenna first overall. And in the middle of all that noise, a second-round pick from the year before quietly went to Europe and became the best player on a national team that made history. Second-round picks are supposed to be lottery tickets. They are the picks teams give away in deadline deals without thinking twice. What Toronto has in Koblar is a 64th overall selection who, 1 year after being drafted, was the leading scorer on a World Championship medal team. He is a center, and he is 6'3", which matters because a big center who can actually play is the single hardest thing to find in hockey, and the single most obvious thing Toronto has been missing for years. And for 2026-27, he is moving from Leksands to Rögle, another SHL club, which means another full season against professionals before he ever crosses the ocean. That move is worth reading carefully because European club transfers say things that scouting reports do not. A teenager who is struggling does not get recruited by a second SHL organization. He gets sent down to the junior team or loaned to a lower division, and everybody quietly stops mentioning his name. Rögle went and got him. That is a professional club, spending a roster spot on a teenager because they watched him play 47 games against men and decided he was worth more ice time than they could get out of a veteran. And the development path here is the one Toronto should want. In North America, a prospect his age would be playing junior hockey, 68 games against 17-year-olds, huge point totals, and almost no information about whether any of it transfers. In Sweden, he is playing a shorter schedule against grown professionals whose living depends on shutting him down. The point totals look worse and mean far more. Now the honest part, because there is one. 9 points in a World Championship is a small sample. Tournaments are short, bounces are random, and a hot 10 days does not make a career. Koblar's club numbers, 14 points in 47 SHL games, are the numbers of a promising young player, not a star. He is not going to walk into the Toronto lineup in October. Realistically, he is 2 or 3 years away from being a candidate for an NHL roster spot, and plenty of players who dominate a World Championship at 18 never become NHL regulars. But here is the counter, and it is short. He did it against NHL players, not against juniors. The World Championship is not the World Juniors. The rosters are full of grown professionals, many of them from the NHL. Koblar scored 6 goals in that environment in his first professional season at 18 years old, and his country walked away with the first medal it has ever won. The scouts had him ranked as a project. Norway had him as its best player. One of those 2 evaluations was made in a boardroom, and the other one was made on the ice against Canada. So, tell me what you think. Does Tinus Luc Koblar become the big center the Maple Leafs have needed for 20 years? Or is 9 points in one tournament the high point of the story? Give me your real prediction below. And if you think Norway beating Canada was a fluke, say that too. I read every single comment.